Hello, Sagittarius. If you are hearing these words right now, there is a chance you have lived a longer journey than most people can see. Not everyone knows how much you have endured, how many times you have fallen and stood back up, or how long you stayed silent, just to keep moving forward. There is a truth that is rarely spoken out loud. Not every difficult season is meant to break you. Some seasons exist for one reason only, to prepare you for a turning point you cannot walk away from. And Sagittarius, you are standing right in front of that moment now. Before the next door opens, pause for just a second and look back at the road you have already crossed, because that road holds the answer to one simple question: why you deserve to move forward and why you are ready now. For the past 13 years, Sagittarius, your life has felt like a long road through heavy fog. Not the kind you see in movies, not romantic, not beautiful, but the kind that forces you to walk, slowly, carefully, just to avoid falling. There were mornings you woke up with a weight in your chest. Not quite despair, but not hope either. Just a quiet, ongoing exhaustion. The kind that repeats itself day after day, until you begin to wonder where you are going and why you are still trying at all. You gave so much of yourself, your time, your effort, your trust, even those early dreams that once made your heart feel alive. You believed that if you just stayed patient a little longer, endured a little more, things would eventually work out. But life does not always move that way. There were doors you knocked on for years, with both hands, with your whole heart, that never opened. There were efforts met only with silence, promises that faded before they ever became real, and long, lonely nights when you sat with the emptiness inside, asking yourself quietly, what am I doing wrong? Your career had moments when it almost lit up. You came so close enough to see what success might look like. And then, just when you believed life was finally on your side, the road shifted, not with a crash, but with a slow, silent slide, leaving you unsure whether to feel sad, angry, or simply stay quiet and keep going. Love followed the same pattern. You loved with rare sincerity, believing that if you were honest enough, generous enough, things would last. But life taught you costly lessons. Not everyone can walk with you to the end. And kindness is not always returned with kindness. For many years, money was never just money. It became an invisible pressure, clinging to your thoughts, numbers repeating in your mind, nameless worries every time you thought about tomorrow. Sometimes it was not fear of being poor. It was fear of being trapped, fear of living in constant defense mode, always bracing for the worst. And that fear wore you down, slowly, persistently. And yet, there is something that must be said softly and slowly. You did not quit. Even in moments when you felt like you were walking alone through a desert, no shade, no signs, no guidance, you kept moving. Maybe not with the same fire as before, but with enough clarity to keep going. Maybe not fully believing in the future, but still protecting a small flame, just enough to warm the coldest days. There were times you thought you were weak, when in truth, you were learning how to endure. Times you believed you had failed, when in reality, you were being shaped. Those 13 years did not take away your Sagittarius spirit. They deepened it. They made your light quieter, stronger, more grounded. You stopped chasing everything on instinct alone. You learned to pause, to observe, to listen to yourself. And whether you realized it or not, that became the greatest gift those difficult years left behind. Now, as you stand here and look back, you may not feel proud in a loud way. But if you allow yourself to be honest, one truth becomes very clear. You are still here, more whole than you think, stronger than you realize, and far deeper than the person you were 13 years ago. What has ended was never meant to remind you of pain. It ended to make space for a different rhythm of life, lighter, clearer, more truthful to who you really are. A strange feeling may begin to surface now, in very small moments, when you exhale and your chest feels just a little lighter, when you think about the future without tightening inside, when you notice you no longer have to brace yourself just to survive, and in that quiet space, something is moving, not loudly, not in a hurry, just a gentle whisper reminding you that none of this was meaningless, and that you are ready to step into a new current of life where the light is no longer waiting at the end of the road, but beginning to rise from within you. There were probably many moments, Sagittarius, when you asked yourself quietly, again and again, why you had to go through so many turns in the road, why things that seemed simple for others felt so much harder for you, why every time hope finally appeared, life would quietly change direction, as if testing whether you still had the patience to keep going. But if you listen slowly, deeply, you may begin to understand something you were not ready to see before. Those years were never a punishment. They were a silent, meticulous shaping, happening from the inside, where no one else could see it but you. You were placed in situations with no shortcuts. No one came to rescue you. No miracle arrived right on time. And in that absence, you were forced to learn patience in a completely different way. Not patience because you believed things would change soon, but patience that allowed you to stay with reality, even when it was uncomfortable. You learned how to breathe through days with no answers, how to keep living, keep working, keep loving, even without knowing when the light would return. Your patience stopped being about waiting. It became conscious endurance, the decision not to abandon yourself. There were things you held on to for a very long time, relationships, expectations, images of a future you once believed was certain. But life kept placing you in moments that required you to let go. Not because you were weak, but because some things, the tighter you hold them, the more they hurt you. Letting go was never easy for you. It was an inner battle, long nights of self-doubt, asking whether you were giving up too soon. Yet each release taught you something profound, that your worth is not measured by how much you can hold on to, but by knowing when to let something leave so you can continue to grow. You had to stand back up more times than you ever imagined. Carefully built plans, step by step, collapsed because of events beyond your control. Sometimes the pain was not failure itself, but the feeling that all your effort had gone unseen. And still, every time you rose, again, slowly, tired, you built another layer of strength inside. You stopped placing all your faith in outcomes. You began to honor the process itself, the simple fact that you could keep moving after everything fell apart. And perhaps the hardest lesson, yet the most important one, was facing your deepest fears. The fear of not being good enough, the fear of being abandoned, the fear of repeating failure, the fear that you had chosen the wrong path long ago. These fears did not disappear overnight. They stayed with you, quietly, for many years. But instead of running, you learned to look directly at them, to see that they do not define you. They are simply traces of experiences that had not yet healed. Every fall you endured had a reason, even if that reason was not clear at the time. Every loss was not meant to take something from you, but to make space for a stronger, wider foundation. What you carry today is not just memory of pain. It is a rare inner strength, formed through time, through endurance, through choosing to continue even when you were uncertain. Without that road, if everything had come too early, too easily, you would not be strong enough to hold what is coming next. Some forms of fortune are not meant for the rushed. They belong to those who have learned enough not to drop them. And as you listen to your own breathing right now, you may feel a subtle shift, a sense that old questions are settling, making room for deeper understanding. There is no need to know what happens next, only this: you have been prepared, quietly and completely, for what is approaching. And this time, you are strong enough to receive it, without fear. That day arrived very quietly, Sagittarius. No bells rang. No dramatic moment forced you to stop in the middle of life. January 5th, 2026 showed up like an ordinary morning, but beneath that ordinariness, something deep and powerful was moving, like the earth shifting silently just before a new season begins. You did not need to do anything special to notice it. You only needed enough stillness to feel it. A very different feeling began to slip into your familiar rhythm, soft, but unmistakably real. This moment did not arrive carrying empty promises. It did not come to convince you that everything would suddenly be perfect. It came to mark something far more important. A 20-year cycle officially began, and you stepped into it with a completely different state of mind. No longer rushing through life on pure impulse, no longer betting everything on blind faith. You entered this season with experience, with depth, with scars that had healed and turned into strength. From that day forward, the current of life began to change its rhythm. Things that had once been delayed, things that kept circling without moving ahead, slowly started finding their own order. You noticed you no longer had to force everything forward. Life began to move more naturally, as if you were finally driving in the right lane. Your efforts stopped disappearing into nothing. They touched reality. They left marks. They created feedback, small but lasting. That familiar sense of helplessness, the one that followed you for years, began to retreat. In its place grew a quiet trust, unannounced, unpretentious, that what you were doing actually mattered. You no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. The simple fact that you no longer had to brace yourself every day was already a profound shift. Time stopped racing through anxiety and became a companion instead. Steady, patient, dependable. Opportunities began to appear differently too, no longer crashing in to test you, no longer arriving too late to leave regret behind. They showed up just enough, right when you were ready. It might have been an offer, a meeting, an idea that surfaced quietly one peaceful evening. None of it overwhelmed you. It all carried a strange sense of familiarity, as if you had been waiting for these moments for a long time, only now truly recognizing them. Doors that had once been tightly closed did not swing open with noise. They simply cracked open, just enough for you to see the light beyond. And this time, you did not rush through. You paused. You observed. You listened. You felt whether you truly wanted to step inside. That calm awareness revealed how deeply you had changed. You were no longer driven by fear of missing out, but guided by a clear understanding of your own worth. The real miracle was not that difficulties disappeared. It was that life no longer stood across from you. Obstacles, when they appeared, no longer felt like battles. They felt like gentle signals, nudging you to adjust direction, not walls designed to stop you. Life began to support you in subtle ways. When you slowed down, everything around you softened. When you trusted your decisions, circumstances responded with cooperation. Deep inside, a new sense of peace took shape. Not peace, because everything was guaranteed, but peace, because you knew you were capable of facing whatever came next. The next 20 years did not feel like a burden. They opened like a wide horizon, a space where you could build, choose, and live true to your Sagittarius nature, this time with freedom anchored in strength. As you continued walking through the days that followed, you may have noticed yourself smiling more often in very small moments. A quiet morning, a task completed fully, a decision made without second-guessing yourself. Those moments gathered silently, forming a feeling you had lost long ago. The feeling of truly living, not just surviving. And within that new current, a gentle certainty waited to be discovered. Another transformation quietly taking shape, ready to carry you deeper into a journey you had been preparing for through 13 long years. That new rhythm of life keeps spreading, Sagittarius. And this time, it reaches straight into the most real parts of your world, the things you have carried in your thoughts for years: money, work, your sense of worth. They are no longer distant ideas or cold numbers. They begin to take on a different tone, warmer, deeper, and most importantly, they start to feel like they belong to you. After January 5th, 2026, the energy around you clearly shifts direction, not loudly, but steadily, like an underground stream that finally finds its way into the light. Money no longer approaches you through anxiety. Before, whenever you thought about it, there was often a quiet tension inside, a need to stay guarded, to stay alert. But now, your relationship with it changes. You stop chasing money out of fear of lack and begin attracting it through clarity in your choices and steadiness in your actions. It may come as income from an unexpected place, a project once set aside, now mentioned again at just the right moment, or a small opportunity at first, one that quietly reveals long-term potential. Nothing arrives to overwhelm you. It arrives to remind you, you are worthy. Your career follows the same pattern. The road you walked was never wasted, even when the detours made you doubt yourself. The experience gathered in silence. The failures no one witnessed now begin to connect in a way that finally makes sense. You realize you no longer need to become someone else to be recognized. Your true self, with depth, with experience, with a calm but sharp way of seeing life, is exactly what others trust. Opportunities that were once delayed return, not because you are luckier than before, but because you are ready to hold them now. There are ideas that lived quietly inside you for a long time. Before, you may have thought they were too risky, too different, or simply ahead of their time. But in this new current, those ideas naturally connect with reality. They stop being vague dreams and slowly turn into real plans, with shape, with direction, with tangible results. There is no need to rush. You only need to trust the intuition that has been sharpened by years of experience and allow things to grow in their own time. Recognition also arrives differently now, not through loud applause, not through fleeting attention, but through the feeling of being seen exactly as you are. It is the moment when quiet effort is finally acknowledged, when someone says they believe in you, not because of what you promise, but because of the consistency you have shown over time. That recognition settles deep, touching your sense of self-worth, and it stays. The greatest difference in this season is that what you create no longer slips through your hands. Before, you may have known the feeling of gaining something only to lose it again, as if success passed briefly through your life. This time is different. What you reach has weight. It has endurance. It is built on understanding, inner discipline, and lessons that were fully paid for. You no longer need to hold on through fear. Your calm presence is what allows things to remain. Looking back, you no longer measure your value by speed or volume. You measure it by clarity of mind, by the ability to build a life you do not need to escape from. Money becomes a tool for freedom, not a source of pressure. Work becomes a place of expression, not just survival. And achievement, when it arrives, does not pull you away from yourself. It brings you closer to who you truly are. In very ordinary moments, perhaps when you sit down after a full day of work, or when you reflect on decisions you have made, a sense of quiet peace appears. Not peace, because everything is perfect, but because you know you are building something meaningful, something with a future. And within that steadiness, another doorway slowly comes into view. No noise, no pressure. Just a gentle invitation to look more deeply into the connections around you, where relationships and emotions are waiting to be touched by a more mature, more complete version of you. And as the material foundations of your life begin to steady, Sagittarius, another movement quietly begins to unfold, more subtle, deeper, touching the softest places within you. Relationships, family, love, the very things that once weighed on your heart, that once exhausted you to the point where you no longer wanted to explain yourself, now begin to breathe differently, slower, gentler, more forgiving. You may not notice it right away, but the long-held tensions of the past are slowly dissolving, like morning mist meeting the sun. Not because every problem disappears overnight, but because the way you see them has changed. You no longer react from fear of being hurt. You begin to listen more deeply, not only to others, but to yourself. And when you stop protecting yourself with silence or emotional armor, the space around you softens as well. Family, for you, was not always a place of rest. At times, it carried heavy expectations, unspoken, distances, or responsibilities that made you feel you had to hold yourself together instead of leaning in. But in this new flow, family begins to take on a different meaning. Not perfect, not idealized. Simply a place where you can exhale. A place that does not demand constant strength, maybe a conversation that feels lighter than before, an understanding that arrives late, but fully, or simply the relief of no longer having to prove that you are right, capable, or worthy. Just being you is enough. Love also steps out of its role as a test. Before, love may have felt exhausting, giving more than you received, sacrificing while quietly fearing abandonment, holding on to something that no longer truly belonged to you. Now, love begins to take the shape of safety. No noise, no drama, just the feeling of being beside someone without needing to defend yourself, without performing, without wondering if they will still be there tomorrow. If you are single, this season opens a very different possibility. You are no longer drawn to connections that arrive quickly and leave just as fast. Uncertainty no longer excites you. The people who enter your life now carry a slower, deeper, more honest energy. It may not be instant fire, but it feels strangely familiar, as if two souls have already learned their separate lessons and are now meeting at a steadier point. You are no longer seeking to fill a void. You are meeting to build. For those already in a relationship, this is a rare and precious time, a time to heal what was once overlooked, unspoken misunderstandings, small wounds accumulated over the years, not to reopen the past, but to see it through a different light, the light of maturity. You stop trying to win. You stop standing across from each other. Instead, you learn to stand on the same side, facing the issue, not each other. And that shift creates a bond stronger than any promise ever could. The most beautiful part of this season is that you are no longer afraid of your own emotions. You allow yourself to soften without feeling weak. You allow yourself to need others without losing your sense of freedom. You understand now that healing does not mean forgetting what hurt. It means no longer allowing pain to dictate how you love or how you live. You carry experience, but not bitterness. You carry memory, but it no longer binds your heart. In very ordinary moments, perhaps a quiet meal, an unconscious touch of the hand, or a conversation that needs no words, you feel a gentle sense of fullness, no climax, no validation, just the feeling of being in the right place, at the right time, with the right people. And as your heart settles into that peaceful rhythm, a new clarity begins to rise from within, a knowing that it is time to live not only for others, but for yourself. That after everything you have lived through, you deserve a life that is not only successful on the outside, but warm, steady, and deeply rooted within. And then, when the connections around you begin to soften, when your heart no longer tightens at the thought of the future, a quiet but unmistakable truth starts to appear. Everything is ready. Not in the sense that life will suddenly be perfect, but in the sense that you are standing before an open path, wide enough for you to step into without lowering your head or shrinking yourself. The universe, in its own subtle way, placed that door in front of you long ago. No pressure, no pulling, just quietly open, waiting for your decision. No one can walk through it for you. No one can live the years ahead in your place. And that carries no burden, only a beautiful kind of responsibility. The responsibility to choose yourself, to choose not to return to old cycles simply because they feel familiar, to choose not to let fear lead the way one more time. Before stepping into this new rhythm of life, some things must be set down, not to erase them, but so you no longer have to carry them on your shoulders. Unfinished stories, unclear connections, promises that expired long ago, memories that still feel heavy when they surface. They are not bad. They simply do not belong where you are about to go. Closure does not mean denial. Closure means recognizing that you have already learned enough from them, that you do not need to remain in pain to prove you once loved, once tried, once sacrificed. You are allowed to walk lighter now. Resentment must be released as well, not because others were right, but because you deserve freedom. Regret, too. It once helped you reflect, but carried for too long, it becomes a chain. Fear, the very thing that protected you during harsher seasons, now needs to step aside, not to disappear completely, but to make room for the courage that has been growing quietly over time. Making space for the new is not just a beautiful idea. It requires real action, a clear decision, a conversation that must finally be spoken, an old habit that needs to change, a plan that must begin even if many details are still unclear. You do not need to see every step. The first one is enough. The new current of life does not welcome those who remain standing at the threshold. It opens to those willing to step in with sincerity and awareness. This 20-year cycle of abundance is not a reward for passive waiting. It does not arrive to rescue you from life. It arrives to walk beside you when you choose to live consciously, choosing yourself in difficult moments, choosing not to compromise with anything that makes you smaller, choosing to believe you are worthy of a full life, not only in material success, but in inner peace. You lived for a long time in survival mode, enduring to get through, enduring to exist, enduring to avoid disappointing others. But from this moment on, a different way of living begins to take shape. The way of the builder. Building day by day. Building through each choice. Building a life you do not need to escape from when night falls. From January 5th, 2026, Sagittarius no longer walks as someone trying to survive. You walk as the owner of your path. You enjoy what you create not through display, but through the deep knowing that you are living truthfully. True to your values, true to your heartbeat, true to who you have become after everything you have lived through. There may still be tired days. There may still be new challenges. But here is the difference. You are no longer afraid of them. You know you can face them. You know you are not alone. And most importantly, you know you no longer need to abandon yourself to keep moving forward. When you step through that door, the first thing that changes is not the world around you, but the way you stand within it, more grounded, more clear, and freer, in the very unique way of a Sagittarius who has learned the most important lessons of a lifetime.